So that's one of the things I want to talk about the vacation, and maybe extending it a little bit further.
What?
Had some time off, and I think I've got some other things, some other cats I want to skin, some other things I want to get into.
I've worked with hundreds of people, but only one made me walk away from everything I built. And to this day, I still can't forgive him.
Aaron Kaufman knows exactly how friendship can turn into resentment. For years, he stood beside Richard Rawlings as the mechanical genius behind Fast and Loud, their on-screen chemistry fueling one of TV's most explosive car shows. But behind the cameras, tension simmered. What started as creative clashes slowly grew into something far more personal. And the collapse of their bond was about more than just business. What really pushed Aaron to the edge to hate the person he worked with? And what did this resentment develop into? Join us as we unveil who Aaron hated more than anyone and why. The first signs of trouble. Aaron Kaufman and Richard Rawlings first crossed paths in the year 2000, long before the cameras rolled. At that time, Richard ran Gas Monkey Garage in Dallas, Texas, while Aaron had already built a reputation as a meticulous fabricator and mechanic. His precision and creativity in custom car work set him apart locally, and it was not long before Richard recognized Aaron's talent. The two formed a partnership that became the foundation of Fast and Loud, which debuted on the Discovery Channel in the year 2012. On screen, Richard was the energetic dealmaker and face of the brand, while Aaron quietly engineered and built the cars that captured audiences' admiration. However, as the show's success grew, differences in their professional priorities began to surface. While Aaron valued authenticity and took his time to perfect each build, Richard and the producers prioritized speed to meet production deadlines and sponsor demands. Aaron's passion for cars and machines had been deeply rooted since childhood. Born in Crowley, Texas, in 1982, he grew up learning the craft from his father, who encouraged him to practice art and mechanics. As a child, his weekends were spent dismantling and reassembling engines in the driveway. He was often keeping the family awake or disturbing the environment with the sounds of welding and hammering. At 16, he had already built and heavily modified a Jeep Cherokee, earning a reputation as someone who could fix vehicles that others had given up on. His first paid work came at a Dallas shop called 4 Wheel Parts. This provided him with hands-on experience that set him apart from other mechanics. Unlike many television personalities drawn to the spotlight, Aaron was self-taught and was on his own until he met Richard. Richard Rawlings discovered Aaron while visiting a local garage, quickly recognizing his potential. Within a few years, Aaron became Gas Monkey's lead mechanic, focusing on adaptive reuse. He took cars destined for the junkyard and transformed them into showpieces. This skill, combined with his creativity and technical expertise, became the cornerstone of the garage's early success and later its television appeal. When Fast and Loud premiered, audiences were captivated by the process. It was a rundown of cars restored and modified under Aaron's guidance, then sold for profit by Richard. Fans admired Aaron's technical skill and dedicated approach to work, which made him feel genuine in a world increasingly dominated by television appearances. However, as the show grew, the relentless pace began to take its toll on Aaron. Living roughly 45 miles from the Dallas shop, Aaron endured long commutes, often leaving home before sunrise and returning after midnight. Some nights, he slept in the garage, rinsing off with a hose and eating anything he could find before another day of work. During filming, directors occasionally asked Richard about Aaron's role. On a certain day, Richard joked that Aaron should be chained to the shop to prevent others from taking him. This remark, which everyone found funny, left Aaron fuming silently under a car as he listened to the crew laugh. To Aaron, passion had brought him this far, but the same passion was quietly becoming a trap he had found himself in. How did this turn into something more serious, and what happened behind the scenes. Tensions. Behind the scenes. On television, Aaron Kaufman and Richard Rawlings looked like the perfect team. Richard was loud, confident, and always chasing deals and attention. On the other hand, Aaron was quiet, focused, and devoted to every detail of his builds. On screen, their differences worked. There were no complaints. However, behind the cameras, the story was very different. Aaron cared about doing things the right way. Richard cared about speed, sales, and keeping the business moving. What worked for viewers and what Richard wanted often clashed with Aaron's principles. At first, their strengths complemented each other. Aaron handled the technical side, Richard managed the business, and the garage ran smoothly. But as Fast and Loud grew in popularity, Aaron's influence diminished. Decisions about builds and projects were increasingly made without him. It was as though he was never in the business. He went from being a partner with a voice in the shop to someone who executed others' plans. For Aaron, who took pride in every job, that felt like a personal blow. Aaron wasn't afraid of long hours or hard work. He often stayed late into the night, finishing projects that made the show possible. Richard, however, could leave after handling business matters. The differences reflected the growing divide between the two partners. Aaron wanted quality and perfection, while Richard and the show demanded speed. Aaron disliked being pushed to finish projects before they were ready. He hated seeing his skill used for ratings and profit rather than craftsmanship. Deadlines on the show were also brutal. Cars that normally took months to restore sometimes had to be finished in days. Aaron recalled working on a 1931 Ford Model A that needed careful attention. Instead of preparing himself and making each step perfect for use, he had to rush to meet the filming schedule. For him, this was stressful and frustrating. Speed became more important than quality, and it felt like his work was being undervalued. Some weeks, Aaron logged more than 110 hours, working 16 hours a day, often going home exhausted and returning the next morning to start over. There were nights he would fall asleep in his welding helmet and workshop wear, too tired to do anything else. For someone like Aaron, this was crushing and stressing his health. His work was being reduced to meeting deadlines rather than creating something remarkable. As if that wasn't enough, the pressure wasn't limited to Aaron alone. The entire crew struggled to keep up, and some builds never reached their potential because there simply wasn't enough time. As time went by, Aaron realized that Gas Monkey Garage and the television schedule would never allow him to work the way he wanted, especially with Richard being around. He didn't want his name on cars that felt rushed or incomplete. The constant tension between his pursuit of perfection and the shop's need for speed created a widening rift between him and Richard. It was clear that their goals were fundamentally different. Richard chased growth and profit, while Aaron chased quality and craftsmanship. This difference was never an issue on camera, but behind the scenes, it was constant. Aaron began to pull away from the business side, focusing only on what he could control in the builds. The environment, once a dream, had become a trap that had forced him to compromise his standards. At what point did Aaron finally think he had had enough? The clash that changed everything. When Fast and Loud premiered, Aaron Kaufman quickly became a fan favorite, and he was quick to rise to fame within the organization. On screen, he looked like the calm, skilled genius behind Gas Monkey Garage. With his full hair, long beard, and unmatched talent under the hood, Aaron was the heart of the operation. Viewers admired his technical skill and dedication, seeing only the finished cars and the smooth teamwork with Richard Rawlings. What fans didn't see, however, was the growing frustration that began eating away at Aaron over time. As the show gained popularity, cameras flooded the garage every day. Initially, the attention felt exciting and entertaining, but soon the excitement faded. The focus of Gas Monkey Garage shifted from building quality cars to producing content that looked good on television. Aaron's work was no longer the priority. Instead, producers wanted action shots, staged reactions, and dramatic moments for the cameras. The building process, which Aaron loved most, became background noise. It was a lot of stress for him. Aaron was not against filming or having fun, but he cared deeply about his craft. For him, each car needed time, patience, and care. He measured twice, cut once, and insisted on doing things the right way. However, on TV, the pace was different. To meet tight deadlines and scripted episodes, corners had to be cut, steps rushed, or scenes faked. Projects he spent hours perfecting were often edited out or overshadowed by unnecessary drama. In reality, one build could take weeks, yet only a few minutes of highlights aired. Seeing his work misrepresented crushed Aaron. The disconnection grew. 5 years into Fast and Loud, Aaron admitted he had only watched 3 episodes of the show he helped make famous, the premiere and 2 from a Pikes Peak special. He avoided watching because he knew that seeing his work misrepresented would make going to the garage unbearable. He had no control over how the editors cut the footage, what dialogue was highlighted, or how his interactions with Richard were portrayed. This clash, however, extended beyond the cameras. It also affected his relationship with Richard. Off-screen, their goals and priorities increasingly diverged. Richard was focused on business, publicity, and fast results. Aaron felt the show sometimes reduced his skills to entertainment, while the part that mattered to him the most was ignored. That disconnect added tension, slowly widening the gap between them. For Aaron, the clash was both emotional and professional. He loved cars, but he hated seeing his work distorted for ratings. The more the show emphasized eventful activities over skill, the more he felt trapped. This tension marked a turning point in his career. It was painful seeing that no one cared about the hard work that truly goes into a craft. After this clash, Aaron was forced to take the next bold step that many people didn't expect: the inevitable option. By late 2017, Aaron Kaufman had to make a huge decision to save himself and his career. He also had to prove to himself that he could do well and succeed with or without Richard Rawlings or Gas Monkey Garage. He opened Arklight Fabrication in Dallas, a small shop with a hand-picked crew, and for the first time in years, there was no camera filming every move and no producers dictating how the team should work. To Aaron, the moment was complete freedom. He finally had the chance to build cars on his own terms, without compromise or interference. However, this freedom came with unexpected challenges. The first few months nearly broke him because he was not familiar with running a business. Aaron suddenly had to handle everything he had never worried about at Gas Monkey. He was now in charge of payroll, vendor contracts, invoices, equipment orders, and cash flow. Where he used to focus on welding, fabricating, building, and designing, he was now buried in spreadsheets, phone calls, and logistical problems. He later admitted that being the boss was far more stressful than any TV deadline or long night at Gas Monkey. It was obvious Aaron was not having it easy at all. At Gas Monkey, Aaron could focus solely on craftsmanship, while Richard and others managed the business. At Arklight, every decision landed on his desk. Nothing happened without his approval. If a supplier missed a delivery deadline, if a tool broke, or if a paycheck needed processing, it was his responsibility. The weight of the role was constant, and the pressure often left him drained. Yet one thing stood out for Aaron. He understood that if he really wanted to fully control his creative vision, he had to learn to run a company and a solid business, not just a workshop. However, despite the hard turns Aaron faced, he persevered. He built systems that enabled Arklight to operate smoothly while maintaining a focus on quality fabrication. His goal was simple but ambitious. He had plans to provide a single source for clients to order everything needed to build a complete custom vehicle, from chassis to finishing touches. Slowly, the shop found its balance. Aaron's dedication to craftsmanship remained uncompromised, and for the first time, he could design cars exactly how he wanted, with no deadlines imposed for television ratings or scripted drama. It was like a dream come true for him. Even though Arklight's TV show never reached the ratings of Fast and Loud, it showcased Aaron's work authentically. Some fans and critics appreciated the slower storytelling and the emphasis on real engineering and fabrication. 2 seasons later, Discovery decided not to continue with the series, but Aaron didn't mind. He had proven that he could succeed on his own terms, combining his love for building with a business model that reflected his values. The work was harder in new ways, but he loved it. It was meaningful and worth every labor. Opening Arklight Fabrication was more than a bold personal statement for Aaron. He had walked away from fame, from massive budgets, and from a high-profile partnership because the priorities at Gas Monkey no longer aligned with his. He wanted independence, integrity, and control over his craft. He also learned a new skill set, one that would allow him to grow a business while maintaining the standards he had always valued. His time at Gas Monkey had taught him discipline, patience, and how to handle intense work. But Arklight taught him leadership, responsibilities, and the challenges of sustaining a real business. What happened after the split? Friends or foes? After everything, fans often ask whether Aaron Kaufman and Richard Rawlings stayed friends after Aaron left Gas Monkey Garage. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Although they still cross paths at random, they are not as close as before. Aaron has admitted that their relationship simply doesn't have much rapport anymore, and it's best to leave it as is. After years of working side by side under intense pressure and public scrutiny, their bond settled into a strange mix. Former partners, now strangers. For people who knew them as friends, the separation was unbelievable. Richard moved on quickly after Aaron's departure. In interviews, he described Gas Monkey as calmer and said the shop felt easier to run without the constant tension. While these comments rubbed some fans the wrong way, they also revealed a deeper truth about the differences between the two men. Richard thrives in high-energy, chaotic environments, the same environment that Aaron found exhausting. For him, the fast pace, the deals, and the pressure of television were motivating and inspiring. It was his own way of being active. For Aaron, it was suffocating. The split was never about personal attacks, although Aaron admitted that there were some growing personal issues and professional differences of opinion. It was also about a fundamentally different life perspective. While Richard focused on speed and the profit he could earn, Aaron focused on his craft and what he was passionate about. When Aaron left, he handled it quietly and deliberately. He avoided criticizing Richard in public, instead explaining that they simply saw the world differently, which, in the end, was no one's fault. From the very beginning, Aaron's priority was never fame or financial gain. It was creating cars that met his exact standards. For him, walking away was not from a bitter place, but a necessary step to preserve his passion and sanity. In his words, he had to get things back to a normal timeline. Since leaving Gas Monkey, Aaron has focused on building his own legacy. After he opened Arklight Fabrication in late 2017 in Dallas, Aaron could finally approach each project at his own pace. He hand-picked a small, skilled crew and created a workspace that valued quality over speed. Aaron also partnered with brands such as MagnaFlow, leveraging his reputation while maintaining creative freedom. Aaron didn't stop at fabrication. In 2022, he returned to the famous Pikes Peak International Hill Climb. Driving a 1949 Ford F1, he named Old Smoky. It was a full-circle moment for him as he was living his life. He also competed in an event he had spent years helping others prepare for, now under his own name and vision. After everything, Aaron continued racing, building, and teaching other shops to prioritize their crafts. This became the new focus of his career. Meanwhile, Richard continued Fast and Loud with new staff until the series ended in 2020. He kept building Gas Monkey into a widely recognized brand, leaning into the style and pace that had made the show popular. While Richard pursued brand growth, Aaron pursued personal growth. The two paths were shaped by the same shared experiences, but led to very different outcomes. Looking back, the split clarified what each man valued most. Mutual respect remains, but the collaboration ended not just because of personal rivalry, but because their philosophies about car building were incompatible. Today, Aaron divides his time between running Arklight fabrication, racing, and working with partners who understand his approach. Richard, on the other hand, focuses on brand expansion, television deals, and high-profile projects. Both succeeded in their own ways. In the end, it showed the importance of choosing a path that aligns with your vision, values, and craft. Do you think it would have been possible for Aaron to achieve something if he hadn't left Gas Monkey? Do you think it is still possible for Aaron and Richard to ever work together again? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.